The human currency, valuing relationships where behavior meets economics. It's been a minute since I've recorded anything, be it YouTube or podcast, but given the recent spotlight of the NDIS and what the Health and Aged Care Minister has had to come in and discuss mid last week at the National Press Conference Club, it takes a good time for me to come back and at least discuss this. And that's mainly because I find myself in a microcosm and in an atmosphere where if I'm scrolling LinkedIn or just checking in on things, it's a whole host of these type of people discussing the NDIS, discussing the reforms, and they've got very specific views, very biased. And then I try to distract myself from a busy day or a couple of minutes to myself, sitting down and catching up with the ongoings on social media or on Facebook. The same thing, you're getting a microcosm of a very biased set of viewpoints, and it's urged me to come back. So I'll discuss in this episode a few different things, what these changes intend to be, why they're intending to change, and the history of government decisions in governing our lives, and why that is okay, why that's normal, and where we sit on that paradigm, where we sit on that spectrum. The advice that I've given to independent support workers, the advice that I've given to other companies, not that I've ever asked for it, however, I feel the need to discuss things openly. I found myself really frustrated, and particularly in this last couple of weeks, namely because we all have a bias, right? If you are a person who has someone with a disability who is in your family, or they're a friend, you're the mother, father, sister, brother, guardian, extended family, you have a bias towards wanting the best outcomes for them as a person in their personal life, in their hobbies, in their happiness, in their fitness, health, longevity, career, purpose and meaning. Of course you do. That's normal. That's okay. The bias is a conflict of interest because you exist in a world where you are influenced by that bias. Your opinion is going to be completely one-sided. Now, lots of people have the ability to step back and view things more impartially than others. And me being the director of a disability company, being a teacher for 12 years and working in this industry for 7 to 10, I have my biases too. And my exposures and experiences have created that bias. And it would be unfair for me to not recognize the bias and try to view things with a lens that sees other points of view. A lot of people in my extended network and people that I just come across from day-to-day life start talking about the NDIS or complaining about it. First thing they bring up, fraud. And I'm like, yeah, fraud does exist. Of course it exists. It exists in every industry, as a matter of fact. And when you're a government industry, it exists as well. But the NDIS, yeah, it has been prolific. And the minister talked a lot about the fraud without going into specifics. He didn't really go into specifics, but I've seen specifics of fraud on a day in, day out basis and heard stories. And I have a bias towards being frustrated with that as a person who's running a business and trying to have integrity and have a morality. It's really hard because you're confronted daily with choices where you can do the right thing or do the wrong thing, and the choices become grayer and grayer as time goes on. If we talk about bias for a second, before I get into all the changes and advice that I've given people, bias as an idea. If you're driving down the road and someone cuts you off in traffic and you tell your friend about that, or you come home and you tell your partner, I was cut off in traffic this morning, how do they react? Well, they generally say, what an idiot. How rude, how silly, how stupid. Oh, I can't believe they'd do that. God, people are ignorant. God, people are stupid. They support you, right? They take your side of it because they protect you as a person. Let's give a different story. someone comes to you and they say, hey, your friend cut me off in traffic this morning, then what do you say? They give excuses. They say, oh, maybe they're in a rush. Maybe they were distracted in the passenger seat. Maybe they didn't see you. You don't know what happened beforehand. Maybe, hey, did you cut them off first? There's an infinite amount of defensible opportunities that they will try to portray to defend someone that they know and their actions, because they're like, I know they're a good person. Surely it wasn't intentional. So when you know the person, you defend them. When you don't know them, you call them an idiot. And that's bias, the essence of bias. Now, as a society, we are an amalgamation of ideas and worldviews. And then we vote in what is supposedly a democracy to determine how we want to be governed, what choices we want our society to align with, and how we want to exist. And based on, a couple of choices that we're given, we vote in this direction or that direction. And again, we're only given a couple of choices. It's not like we can go and just recreate the wheel here. We can just sort of shift in this V down this fork in the road. We can go slightly more to the left or slightly more to the right. And the idea is that as a whole, the majority of people are aligning to choose this direction. That's what the idea of our amalgamated worldview is supposed to add up to in choosing as a society where we're going to go. The fork in the road, it's been an inevitability that the government have had to grab this thing, being the NDIS, and make changes to it because of a whole plethora of reasons. But there's been a whole bunch of media exposing fraud. There's been every news article that I come across is about a fraudulent company this, a dodgy practitioner that, blah, 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 blah. And there has been absolutely ridiculous things that have been allowed to go on within the industry of disability and support work and providers for a long time. The idea at the moment that is fresh in mind is that you can be accused or be fired from working within a registered disability company, and you can have your worker screener check crossed out, but you can still work as an independent support worker for any family and walk into any home. There's no rules, regulations, or anything that prevents someone from doing that, which is absolutely ridiculous. That someone can sexually assault a person of vulnerable needs or take advantage of them financially and then go and work in the industry in someone's home with the most vulnerable of society. That's been allowed to happen. And that's because families and individuals who have been given the opportunity, the privilege to hire and determine a workforce and create what they wanted for their person on the NDIS in their life and what role they want to give this worker. And I'm just talking mainly from a support worker stance. Like as a family or as a mother, father, whoever, if you're bringing someone into your home, if you're bringing someone into your life, even if your participant is living in a SIL home and then you're hiring a support worker and you might have a conversation with them, you might just get them referred to you by a support coordinator. You might just talk to them and come across them on Facebook. Like there could be absolutely anybody. And people haven't even bothered. I've put 40 participants to 100 participants in connection with support workers. And it's got to be less than 5% of the time. Someone will even ask me for a police check, a worker screener check, first aid, insurance, anything. I'm rarely asked to prove anything. Now, 3 years ago, we were on the forefront and I was like, we are going to apply to get access to having a worker screener check because I want to provide a level of diligence where if we're going into a home, hey, look, we already have these covers. We already have a worker screener check, which is essentially the same thing as a working with children check, and it's the same thing as a police check. They're all the same thing. And if you're registered, working for a registered company, you have to pay for all three of these. Or the company might pay for them, but generally the individual pays for them. I don't know, I'm speculating there. anytime we've got a new support worker or someone who wants to do work with us, I personally ensure that they get the worker screener check done and we cover it. The company covers it because we want to provide a level of experience that, no, it's not mandated, no, it's not required, but I'm providing it anyway because that's how else are you going to trust the person in your home? It's like the most person-centric, human-orientated industry that I can think of where trust is so important. You're taking someone vulnerable who might not have the ability to articulate their thoughts, feelings, and relay what's happened and explain their needs. And they're just going off with someone and you're just trusting them. So if I'm a family, if I'm an individual who is an advocate for a participant, like, my son or daughter has a disability, I am demanding a worker screener check. Oh, you can't get access to one? That's okay. Do you have a working with children's check? Yes, I know he's not a child. He's 25 years old. He's 40 years old. I know he's not a child. Let's just get you a worker with children's check so I know and I can feel comfortable that you've passed that checking basis. Do you have an up-to-date police check? I'm not going to make you get one every 3 months, but have you got one that's valid in the last 12 months, 24 months? Give me something, for goodness sake. But it's been allowed to get to this point where anyone and everyone, and you're looking at some of these support workers, I'm like, is that guy a drug dealer / support worker? Like, who is holding these people accountable? And it's put a really bad light on the industry. The next thing that has really frustrated me in the last few years, and this is something that I've seen, I'm sort of in and out in social media. I'll ban myself because I just find myself arguing with people and telling them that what they're doing is wrong, and then they don't like it, understandably. So, because we don't like to have our egos checked. So I ban myself and then I come back. But what has frustrated me, and I never spoke up enough about, was support coordinators who, not them in general, some of them are fantastic, go above and beyond and work for free and do all these amazing things. But support coordinators who hire or contract support workers as an arm of their business. And that, talking about bias, talking about conflict of interest, that is an absolute conflict of interest. There is no way that you can tell me that it's not a conflict of interest. There's no ethical way around it. If your job is to provide advocacy and provide support coordination opportunities and a menu of providers to a participant, and then you are incentivized financially because you make more money when you hire your own workers, your own support workers, that wherever you pick them up from, Hire Up, Mabel, Facebook, behind a nightclub near the garbage bins, who knows? Or you bring them in and grant them a visa. Who knows where these people are coming from to find themselves getting work in this industry? Again, not necessarily needing a worker screening check, not needing a police check, not needing residency, not needing anything, and they can work in the industry. I didn't speak up enough about it initially, but I did have a go at the CEO of Willara and through LinkedIn and asked him, explain to me what you're doing by providing support coordination and being a provider. Just explain to me how that's not a conflict of interest. And he sort of kerfuffled around, but, basically talked down to me because he's a big wig CEO. He knows better. If you can describe for me how it's not a conflict of interest to fill your own bags by getting and ensuring a participant have as much funding as they can get, and then funneling them over into your own programs where you make more money, I'd love to hear it, because I don't think that there's a defensible way you can approach that situation. So, red flags to families and advice. When you're hiring someone, get something from them. Get a working with children's check from them and have them pay for it. If they are running a business and they're doing it independently or they're doing it through Mabel, then they should be investing in themselves as a professional running a business and understand that that's a cost that's associated. No, I will not fund you to get yourself a working with screener check if you're a family. Don't fund them to do it. Demand it of them. If they can't produce it, then move on. I know it's hard to find reliable support workers, but they're reliable until they're not. And the shadiest of shady are going to be the better ones that are, personally able to manipulate a friendship. And it's an imperative that you have to take responsibility over who you're bringing into the role. That's the framework one. Two, if you're liaising with the support coordinator, ensure that, and it's hard because how would you know, even if you ask the questions, hey, is this support worker that you're providing me, is this an arm of your own business, Mr. Support Coordinator, who is my supposed advocate? Does this person come from you? Where do they come from? Explain it to me. Just ask the questions. But ethically and morally, a coordinator who is also acting as a provider, it's morally bankrupt. It's ethically the wrong thing to do. There's no way out of that situation other than it's a massive conflict of interest. I hope they tidy it up with these new rules, but I don't think they will. So it's up to the individual. I'm going to go now into some of the changes that have happened that most people would have heard of, but the announcement that was made didn't actually confirm what exact changes are going to be made. They just sort of directionally said, here's what we're going to do. So community access and participation, they're going to decrease the funding for participants. Most support workers are accessing that sort of support work, that sort of funding. It's going to get tight. My advice to support workers that I know has been, make yourself a necessity. Demonstrate your need and why you are essential to this person's life. All right. If that means creating a business on behalf of a participant and running that business with them and putting all this extra time in your own life and figuring that out, then do that. If that means pushing them outside their comfort zone and confronting them and making them, heightened and pushing people to the point where they don't like it and they're arguing back and it's caused a little bit of friction. But hey, it goes against that conflict of interest. It goes against my job is to help someone else find purpose and meaning and enhance and grow their capacity as a person. And whether they like it or not, we don't like to eat salad every day. We don't like to go and do work in the gym or fitness when it's not our usual thing because it's hard. Of course it's hard. It's that friction. It's that battling that hard thing and overcoming it that gives us hardness and strengthens our character and our body and our mind. So when you're pushing someone to do things that they don't want to do and they could, they're not happy to see you next time, that goes against the incentive of keeping your own job because you need the job to pay your mortgage, to pay your rent, to pay your bills, to save up for your holiday. So it's completely counterintuitive, but you have to create friction. You have to push back if you want to find yourself as a necessity in a person's world. And most of the times what families want is someone who shows initiative, not someone who just is told what to do and is a gopher. Yeah, that can be helpful too. But if you're showing initiative and you're coming up with ideas, you're coming up and pushing and bringing new, fresh ideas to the table, and you have an ability to psychologically get that person on board to maybe wanting to do that fitness activity that they never have ever liked or eat that healthy food that they never have ever tried, then you're doing your job and you're directionally pushing in the right way. All right, next thing. They're going to remove the intermediaries. Now, we don't know what that means. Is that support coordinators? That sounds like what they're talking about. Now, not everyone needs a support coordinator. Some people more than others. Fine. That might also mean some providers who, they're not creating value or they don't know what they're doing, then they might move on to. There's going to be registration requirements for self-care and daily living. So there's registration for supported independent living environments, for SDA. That's, they're just now coming down the hierarchy of highest needs to lower needs, and community access and participation is the absolute lowest of the needs of the hierarchy. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying it's not critical in people's lives. I'm saying the hierarchy of needs for a person with disability, specialist disability accommodation is the highest need. Physically, mentally, nurses, one-to-one support in a home while someone's living there. Seal homes next. And then now you've got daily living and self-care. Some independent workers might be accessing funding through these areas. They haven't discussed exactly what these registration requirements are going to be. Will that mean a full audit and these whole plethora of documents that have the regulation around them? Now, skilled carer has all those documentation. We've implemented it where we needed to, but it's on the back burner at the moment because I'm not going to over bureaucrat the whole process and over paperwork things that aren't required. Sure, if we've got a risk analysis and someone with epilepsy, yeah, we're going to implement it. If we've got, but we're not going to do it for everybody. Now, it might simply mean that a worker screener check is required. Fantastic. It's that next level of diligence that's going to be accessed and required. But don't go, if you're a provider, you're a company, you're an independent, don't go getting audited, don't go getting registered because you don't even know what the requirements are yet. So just wait. What they're going to do is they're going to make immediate changes to the community access and participation funding by reducing that in people's plans, effective if they can get a bill passed before the end of this financial year, which is what he was saying. It's Mark Butler, isn't it? Then next financial year, so come July 1, people might find that they have some of their funding cut immediately. We don't know what that looks like again. They talked about the number being an average packet per person of being $30,000 for community access and participation being reduced to $26,000 by 2028. Instead of growing, it's shrinking. Again, 3-year process, how it looks, we don't know. I think it'd be hard for them to just go into everyone's plan by July 1st and just cut it in half or cut 10% off it. I think that's unlikely, but I'd say that's the direction it's heading. So, which is why you need to make yourself a necessity as a support worker if you want to remain in the industry long term. They're also going to change the way that someone is funded based on functional capacity, what they can do no longer. And it should, when there's a saying in disability that when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. You can look at a whole bunch of things that are similar in people with autism or any disability for that matter, but it's never the same. You're never talking about you're meeting an individual as who they are as a whole, what triggers them, what their hobbies are, what works for them, how they need to be communicated to, what tools they need to communicate back, how much time do they need to understand an idea or subject and move on to the next activity, whatever it is. When you've met one person, you can't just go and throw a net over a whole group of individuals and go, I'm just going to treat everyone like this and it will work. Unless it's a very general theme like kindness, for example. But functionally, what is this person capable of doing? What is their capacity? And that will determine their level of funding. So completely subjective and means it's, you can describe that a whole number of ways and you're going to get different outcomes. So be it. That is the way they do that is going to start changing and they expect that to be introduced by 2028. So we're talking 2 years away from now. It's a good thing. It means if you've got greater functional needs and lower capacity, you're going to get more funding. If you have a higher capacity to do things and you have good function, then you're probably going to be less likely to be funded. So be it. It is what it is. That's the way I've just described that and talked about that. I can understand that triggers people because this is the frustration that I find myself with talking online about. Not even talking about it because I just see the posts, people complaining about the changes, and I sort of read half of it and then just, what am I doing on here? Get off it. But I want to describe this as an idea because the philosophy of disability support through government has been a very changing thing. Topher Feild discusses this 20-minute video that I put on my Facebook about, a free market and a government interacting with a market. And he's got punters politics on there complaining about the NDIS, complaining about different things. And Topher's kind of like pretty economically educated and well-spoken. And he explains and breaks down in lots of different ways about why what punter's saying is wrong and why when the government interferes with an idea, they mess it up every single time. So if you want to learn more about that and get some context in what I'm about to talk about, Look at that. But the idea of the NDIS and its funding and the way it's structured and systematically exists, it's a spectrum. It's a three-dimensional spectrum. How are we going to assess people? How are we going to fund them? It's not, oh, they're changing it. That's it. It's bad. Screw it up. Throw in the bin. And that's the way, if you just read people's posts, like the mother, the father, the brother, the sister, the person whose job is required within the industry to exist so that they can get paid. Like, of course they're annoyed. There's changes. I'm annoyed. There's changes. Like, I'm not. I'm actually content. I'm quite happy, and I like that they're changing it. You should change things. You should look at an idea. If there's problems with it, fix it. That's what I think. Now, to go, oh, they're changing it. They're going to reduce funding. My kid's going to miss out. That's not fair. It's like, all right, let's take about 15 steps backwards and just break this thing down with care and fair criticism. So let me discuss this idea of right and wrong, right? The discussion that you might have had in primary school, or you see kids when they're asked this question, is it okay to take a loaf of bread when it's not yours, to steal a loaf of bread? And a very rigid mind of, like, I think it's like an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old, when they're asked that question, they say no. But what if the family's starving and I have a starving child? Is it okay to steal that loaf of bread? They say no. They're a very rigid mind. That's not a right or wrong thing, but it's the concept of philosophy. And as that person gets older, and as their empathy grows and their subjective mind grows, they have the ability to then say, oh, wait, if they have a starving child, no, they need to, yes, the breaking the rule was wrong, but it's okay to feed the child. So I think that's okay. And they start to change their ideas. And that's a spectrum. You might have someone that says, yes, it's okay to steal a loaf of bread, no matter what the problem is. They're a millionaire. Is it okay to steal a loaf of bread? Yeah, it's okay. Because that's their philosophy on liberty or whatever it is, their worldview. So be it. How they've got to that point for a reason. What about the idea of property rights and confiscation, right? So do I have a right to own something? Do I have a right to own a pair of shoes? And you move along this spectrum, right? Are they my shoes? Yes. What if someone takes them? How am I going to defend that property? That's a whole nother subject. Am I going to exert physical violence on them when they've just taken my property? What is right? What is wrong? And parents have to guide their children on this and these concepts as they go through school, and they confront these very basic issues. Well, this person bullied me and called me a name. Well, what are you going to do? What should I do, Dad? Oh, you should go and walk up to him and punch him in the face. And that's what some parents tell their kids. And that is a philosophy that has come from somewhere. Private property and property confiscation. Okay, but I'm not saying what you do and don't have a right to own. Let's say do you have a right to own a computer, a house, a business? You've put all your money that you've saved up and worked over 20, 30, 40 years, and you've put it into a business and you make widgets. Then a nuclear bomb is dropped. Then war breaks out. Okay, now the government is going to take back your manufacturing base. They're going to take control over it. And now you have to make these things for war. Along that spectrum, there's a point at which it's okay for the government to come in and take these things over and take control of it for the betterment of society, for the country, for patriotism, for what they need. Now, that's not the debate, right? But the debate is, who makes the rules? How do we make the rules? When is it okay? When is it not okay? And at some point along that spectrum, there's probably situations where all answers are correct. Philosophy, rules and government. So early tribal societies, they got their rules from gods, from myths, from their ancestors, and from priests, and divine stories, supernatural punishment from the gods. All right. Over time, there's a lot in between those ideas and to now us being governed by government setting the rules. Ancient kingdoms were next, ancient Egypt, Babylonian empires. The rulers claimed that they were gods. They were chosen by gods, or they were governed through a divine mandate. Then we had religious legal codes emerging and formal moral ties that are tied to religion, the creation of the Bible. But even before that, the creation of the Bible, there was Greek philosophy. And this was 600 to 300 years BC. So 2004, 500 years ago. And people started thinking and shifting between what myth told us to do and asking and discussing what is ethical, what is truth, what is justice. Figures like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. After that, we had Roman law, where the philosophy from these thinkers became legal frameworks like citizenship, governance, tax, bureaucracy under the Roman Empire. There was a medieval era, and that was mostly religion being dominant, heavily influenced by the Catholic Church. Moving on, 1600s, 1700s, there was other philosophers like John Locke, and they were arguing that governments, they derive legitimacy from citizens, and they have rights, and people have rights, and there's a social contract. It's not God that makes these rules, it's us within a society. There was then modern nation states, right? Now we're talking about governments being the primary rule makers, constitutions, courts, laws, democratic institutions determining what is right, what is wrong. What are the laws? And these laws have changed over time. People have gone to jail for crimes that have since the rules have changed. Like people who might have smoked weed in America went to jail for 20 years or sold weed, and then they changed the law in California or different states, and they said, yeah, guess what? Now it's actually legal to sell it and to have it. And they've just done 20 years jail for the crime that is now legal. Now, there's a lot of nuance there, but times change, and that sucks. That sucks for those particular individuals. Just like if some funding changes happen and someone that you know, someone that you care about is the victim of that in your eyes and in their eyes, that sucks. It does suck and it does hurt. But these things move and shift and change, and it's a spectrum, right? So today, governments still set the rules, but they can increasingly compete with corporations, with algorithms, with media platforms, with financial systems, and they shape behavior. But some of these places don't need laws. Like they've talked about the rights of people under 16. Wayne Holdsworth was an advocate because he lost his son to a scammer on social media, and he's advocated to change the laws so that people under 16 can't have access to social media. Now, I don't necessarily agree with those things, and directionally, I'm like, it just is what it is. But I certainly respect someone for advocating for what they believe in. To simplify it, we've had laws and rules governed by God, then priests, then kings, then philosophers. Now, the story of Greek philosophy is that they were trying to determine how they should live their life, how people of ancient Greece should live and be governed. And what they would do is they would have a whole bunch of these elders, these experienced, wise people, sit around, talk about the ideas, discuss what is true, what is good, how society should be organized, and then determine how they should be ruled based on that discussion. And if I'm trying to, the link I'm trying to draw is that happens nowhere near as much as it should anymore. It's just like if you're on Facebook and someone's having a whinge about all the awful atrocities that have come across them because of the changes to the NDIS, that's their one anecdotal experience that is completely biased to their experience. And it doesn't make them right, because the NDIS is a powerful, wonderful thing for families and individuals. But from what I've seen, it has absolutely gone way too far to the giving side without any rules and structure about how to make it sustainable and how to reduce people exploiting it. And the exploitation does not just come from providers. The exploitation comes from a whole host of people, anyone and everyone, support coordinators exploiting it through deciding to pick and choose support workers, chuck a couple of people on Facebook, a DM, get them to work for you, sign this agreement, come work for me, and then the coordinator distributes them the work and gives no choice to the participant because the participant's a vulnerable person. The exploitation comes from individuals and participants on the scheme or families who say, hey, I want a new bed, but the NDIS won't fund it. How unfair. And they're in a vacuum talking to someone, complaining to them. These are true stories that I've heard years ago, mind you, but still true. Will you, as the support worker, buy the bed and then send me $5,000 worth of invoices and then you get your money back? Someone came to me asking advice. What should they do? And I told them, why would you risk and put your entire existence and your integrity, your morals, and your business and your reputation on the line for a person who's just going to throw you under the bus if they get caught? But like, why would you do it regardless? First of all, because then you've got no integrity. Secondly, why would you do it when they're going to throw you under the bus? So this stuff happens. Supported independent living environments that are, providers providing SIL homes that are bribing support coordinators. Give me a participant, I'll give you 20 grand. Because they know they'll get the participant and they'll make 100 grand from that exchange, 50 grand, whatever. But it's the cost of doing business. And then long term, they'll have that participant potentially for life. Hey, participant, come and live in my SIL house. Come and do this, be a participant in our organization, and we'll have a support worker with you, and we'll give you a free iPad. This stuff happens. And somewhere along that spectrum, it needed to hit a dead end and turn around and come back and find out where it's okay, where it's cool, where things are fair, and where we can cut out some of this rubbish. But what we should do as a society is recognize our bias, be able to look in the mirror and ask hard questions. And it's very easy to say it when you're in a position where you do have a lot of autonomy. And I'm very lucky to have put myself in that position where I've got autonomy and I can have integrity. So I understand, again, the conflict is that if you're struggling to pay your bills, if you're struggling to pay rent, if your partner's left and you're raising a family by yourself, then the first thing to be sacrificed is your integrity, because you just take the money because you just need the money, because you just need to get by. But as a whole, if we can discuss the ideas, that this is what determines a society. We're discussing ideas in a town circle, and then we decide how we're going to move forward. Now, that is absolutely not how government works. That is not how the rules work. It's a political football. They've decided to change it, not based on what I've just described about ancient Greek philosophy, but just based on political football. We'll win voters if we take a hard stance on this, because if we don't, the other counterparts will, and then they'll get voted in, and so we lose our power. Now, I could do another 14 hours podcast on government incentives and why that's broken, and why the only true way that you can govern your life is self-sovereignty, by making decisions in your life, how you choose to live your life. That's it. If you are, I'm politically agnostic. So whether Labor makes these changes, Liberal make these changes, Pauline Hanson makes these changes, I don't care. I'm agnostic. I don't care. I'm not choosing a political party because their ideology of politics in the modern era doesn't align with anything that I believe with. If you're expecting a politician to save you, you're stuffed. You will never be saved. You've got to do it by yourself on your own. Rant done. Thanks for taking the time to listen. Thanks if you got this far. And I'll do an update when we hear more about some of these changes, that when they become official, because as of now, they're not. Peace.